Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Enough channel. In this video, we're looking at the NRL SuperCoach stock market for round 22. Um, yeah, pretty early this week, sort of had a big rush of energy Monday night, so quickly got all the stats together. Um, Essentially, just been sitting around for teams to drop, and now they have. Um, I think I've made a couple of last minute tweaks. I might have missed a couple. It was really just a quick glance, but let's get it in the can and get it out there for the people. So, as usual, we're going to kick off with the premium hookers. So this week we're looking at the 550k plus range in that category. And at the top of the list this week is Lachlan Croker. So a couple of big weeks from Lachlan Croker. Got some attacking stats on the weekend, which was really nice to get at 84 against what was a pretty flat Sharks defense. Um, people might be chasing that second hooker with a bit of value, but I think Croker's a trap. This 3 round average isn't really indicative. As you can see, his season average is 51, which is well down on our more gun and pod type options. Cody Nikorima, so coming off the bye this week, has been named to play at 5'8". So Milford's gone back to the bench. So Isaiah Katoa's dropped out of the squad. But the fact that Milford's on the bench sort of suggests that Nikorima might get a bit of a rest. Obviously, he has utility value. They could shuffle him back to fullback in case of a backline injury. He may even spell Jeremy Marshall King in the hooker spot for a bit. And so, for that reason, I think now's the time to cut and run. He's been going really great playing fullback and obviously scoring well, but he's not playing fullback anymore. So for that reason, he's the second most expensive hooker in the game at the moment. So you can essentially get anyone. If you've got 20 grand, you can even go up to Harry Grant. So I'd recommend getting out of Nikorima if you've got him as a pick. Damien Cook, you know, 59 last week isn't ideal, but compared to some of the other scores, you would have taken it. The only thing I guess he has against him is that round 26 bye. I've talked about it previously, head to head finals. A lot of those are that weekend, that round. So you don't want to load too hard up on South players. But if I had to nominate two, he'd probably be in the top two, second to my main man Latrell. So I can understand people bringing him in, and particularly if you got trades left, you can switch to someone else as a pod for the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it's never a bad time to bring in a gun. Harry Grant, he's a gun as well. 36 last week. Generally, the Storm bounced back after being embarrassed the week before. Even his break even of 78 isn't safe this week. Blake Brayley, so on the slide, I've still got him as a pod, but yeah, I think he's probably the bottom of the sort of pod list at the moment, given the Sharks' attacking issues, or actually more so defensive issues. They can attack, they just can't seem to defend, and they do have a bit of a tough run coming up. So, a bit of base probably from him, but maybe the attacking upside isn't there. And Jerry Marshall King is named back from his shoulder injury. They're not carrying a hooker on the bench. As I said, they got Milford as their sort of bench player that could cover, but it'll probably be through Nikorima as we discussed previously. You can wait a week and give him a look with the break even in the 100 category. He will drop in price and might be a tasty sort of option in a couple of weeks. Onto the budget hookers. So I guess this is covering cheapy and mid-range options. As the main cheapie that we've been looking at, Harry Graham has been benched. So on the extended bench to expand on that. So despite having a really nice break even, great price for a downgrade, it's not really going to get you anywhere. So yeah, people who did get on that hoping to make a bit more money are probably a bit stuck. But hopefully you can find a bit of value in one of these other picks. It's not so hard to reach. Brendan Hands, so 53 last week. And I guess if your budget is really tight, he's probably the better options out of the starting players. However, they have just signed Joey Lussick. I think Joey, yeah, Freddie plays for the Warriors. Second guessing myself now. But yeah, he is named on the bench this week. So you'd imagine it'd still probably be like a 60-20 sort of split. While Joey's getting fit into the team, it could end up being a 40-40. But if you've got him, you hold him another week or two and assess. With a break even of 3, he'll make some more money, and then maybe you can reach up to one of the other options. Uh, the Cheese, Brandon Smith, give him a little shout. 81 last week, 73 minutes, which was really good to see. And it sort of has that feel like the Roosters are, they're desperate to make the 8. So they're probably going to try and play their big players as much as they can. Teddy got massively involved. Manu scored decently well in terms of Supercoach. So, the fact they've given him more minutes obviously means that he's fit enough to play those minutes, but also that, they know that he has that ability to break a game open. And, for these last sort of pod decisions, um, they're the sort of players that can, win you a head-to-head matchup in the finals, for example. So, yeah, I don't hate it. I'm not going to go it just yet. I'll have another look. His price won't get too far out of hand. But, at 400k, he does represent good value if he's playing those big minutes with his upside potential. Appy Coruscant, another one at a cheap price with upside potential. Um, Luke Brooks is back for the Tigers this week. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen. But they look pretty well full strength now, so hopefully they can get a bit of fluidity about them, and Appy will obviously be a big part of that. Wade Egan, it's on the bye this week, but 62 last week. He's looking really good, even with Freddie Lussick on the bench. Um, so yeah, and we saw at the start of the year, he can score tries and get that 60 score up to a 90. So yeah, absolutely one to keep in the back pocket. He's on bye this week, but then obviously after that he's got a clean run. Tanner Boyd, so with the 6 on the weekend, and got hooked to get Jaden Campbell into the game, who then proceeded to play quite well actually. He's going to have to get the chop not just from the Titans game on the weekend, but from our Supercoach squad. So, obviously you could downgrade, which sounds weird, to Appy or Brandon Smith. I think, those are both decent trades. You could go up to one of the other pod options if you can find about 100k. Obviously, if you can find a couple of hundred, get yourself a gun. Reece Robson, 41 last week, a bit flat. Um, I guess maybe post Origin, just trying to get back into the rhythm of it. Probably also because the Cowboys have been going so well, he hasn't had to do that much defence. He obviously can attack, but he's probably more um, well known at the moment for his defensive capabilities. So that's sort of being reflected in his 3 round average. And Reed Marnie, so we won't talk about last week anymore. I ranted enough about that in my round reviews. But named back at hooker this week, they do have Kyle Flanagan on the bench, so be interesting to see how they work that. With I guess the Bulldogs have essentially what is a full strength side, other than obviously Luke Thompson still isn't back playing. But aside from that, I can't see too many names missing from the team sheet. So hopefully he's back there playing big minutes, and we can bank a decent score out of him. Oh, I've got backwards there. Onto the premium front rowers. So Adam Finua Blake, solid 61 on the weekend, on the bye this week. it's 1 week, you just hold. If you've got him, obviously, if you've got him and Tino, and you're desperate to win your head-to-head match, well, I'd probably still lean towards trading out Tino, just because one, he's got more cash on him, and two, Phil Blake will be back next week for the first week of the finals, assuming you make it. Mo Fodawaker, so got a question about him last week, so I thought I'll put some respect on the big man. 66 he scored, so 3 round average of 71. And obviously he's going to take a fair bit of that slack with the Tino size hole left in their middle forward rotation. So, an interesting point of difference, whether it's the most successful or not. Like, I don't know if he's got that much upside, the big fella, to be honest. But he'll put in a big effort every week, and he's fun to watch too. Sometimes it's just nice to have a player that you can sit and enjoy watching. Joey Tarpany, 61 on the weekend. That's been his mode sort of all year. 60 base, might get a bit of attacking stats now and again. He's a keeper. We can't put the pod status on him because he's at about 30% ownership. And I guess with his average, he's probably not quite at the gun level. So, a bit in between, but definitely one to have in your final squad. Corey Horsburgh, so I guess very similar profile in that same team, same dual position, slightly lower average, but same 3 round average, same sort of price. Yeah, I guess it just depends. You probably have one or the other. I don't know if you need both necessarily in your final squad. If you do, they're pretty handy sort of rotation options for your front row, second row. So why not? Payne Haas, 62 last week, which is probably about his floor. He's a gun. No need to stress. He'll be a keeper till the end. Mitch Barnett is on the buy this week. Probably has peaked in price. So if you did want to trade him to another front row forward or even second row option, obviously his dual position at around that price point, I wouldn't begrudge you of that. Under the budget front row forward, so Jesse Colquhoun from the Sharks looked like he might be a cheeky sort of little option to get some cash and points at a severe discount, but unfortunately got himself suspended this week. Wade Graham's been named on that left edge, so back to the future a bit there with the Sharks, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they do go good against Penrith this week, and you never know, it could happen. Whether Colquhoun's spot could be back on the bench, um, but yeah, for this week he's not a viable option. TPJ and Max King, we'll throw them in together. A couple of Bulldogs dual position players. Obviously, TPJ has the upside. Max King's probably a little bit more base. But at their price and the dual position, I think is their main advantage. You could have one. I wouldn't recommend having both, particularly given the Dogs have the bye next weekend. It's a problem I'm currently pondering is how to get around that with all my Bulldogs players I've got in and players I want to get in too. But we'll talk about that later. Ruben Cotter, so only 40 on the weekend, 3 round average of 35, probably is selling him a bit short. But I think as well, the Cowboys are taking the sort of slowly approach with him, returning from what was a massive Origin series, obviously playing 80 minutes or more or less for the whole series. So yeah, he's one if you need to like absolutely squeeze the budget. Um, yeah, I think he'll do a serviceable job, particularly if you're carrying someone like a Tohu Harris who has the bye this week. Cotter can slide in, and then Tohu will come back next week just fine. Jack de Belin, I've got on the chopping block as well as Nelson Asafa Solomona. So a couple of down weeks from Big Nas and JDB. So I think probably with their sort of money, you could either go down to someone like a TPJ if you want that swing or Cotter if you're happy with them in the front row, and they'll obviously produce similar results. Or obviously we want to go up and get some prime keepers. And Tohu Harris, so another sort of flat week with 52 on the bye this week. I'd suggest holding. I feel like maybe he'll just have the rest this week and then he'll be hitting it hard the run home. Maybe that's wishful thinking. That should have been less than. Oh no, that was right. Less than 600. And anyway, I've clicked on it and we've moved on. So Bryce Cartwright at the top of the premium, a second row forwards list. So it's like it's about 8 years ago, all of a sudden. But he's just been continuing to go well. 73, averaging 60 more or less for the season. So I think if you've got him, you just hold him for the rest of the year. He won't play the last round, but if you've got a trade left, you can flick him at that point. Lockie Fitzgibbon, so 76 on the weekend, obviously benefiting from the Knights' sort of turn in fortunes, particularly playing as that left edge outside Ponga doing the business and feeding Greg Marzu and Bradman Best. So it's like a few years ago with the Warriors where I think it was Sean Johnson, Tohu Harris, Mamala, I think was the winger, and basically you could just stack the whole right edge of the Warriors and know you were getting attacking points because they were all just doing the business. It's the new Warriors right edge is the Knights left edge. Isaiah Yo, so 91 on the weekend, got a try. So not that he needs much of a boost in his score, but why not if he can get it? So he's a gun. Even though he's got a high break even, just get him in and enjoy the scoring. Nat Butcher, 74 on the weekend. I think he got a try from memory. Both brothers got a try. So, we know he is capable of getting that little bump when he does get a try, which is probably what puts him over the likes of Josh King and the other sort of base stat beasts in the middle, second row sort of category. Pat Carrigan, though, he's still the king of the base in the second row. So average of 63, really no attacking stats in all of that across the season. So it's just through runs and tackles. Maybe an offload from time to time. Jermaine Hopgood, 63 on the weekend. It's still a gun. Look at that average. Says it all. Nikora, obviously the Sharks were a bit flat. And when they were attacking, it did seem to be a little bit more down the left against Manly. So obviously he missed out playing on the right. But he's still a gun and he'll bounce back, so we're not worried about him. Jeremiah Nanai has done himself a mischief and is out to 4 to 6 weeks, so might not be back until the finals, which is obviously not good for SuperCoach purposes. So if you've got him, you give him the chop. And Dave Fafita, 57 on the weekend. His average is slowly creeping down, but he's still 10 points above the next best, so he is the tank. Onto the budget, second row options. So I guess really only one cheapie or maybe two now that I look a bit closer at the list. Dan Russell on the bubble. So scored 43 last week. Named to start again in the second row. So bottom dollar, dual position, second row, centre wing is a nice sort of swing to have. It's one I wish I had at the moment personally, but I don't. So yeah, I guess if you're looking for the cheapie of the week, it would be him. But we're really not in the business of buying cheapies at this time of year, I would have thought. Cam Murray, so 76 on the weekend, and a 3 round average of 73. So it looks like he's sort of back as a pot option, and at a really nice price too. So compared to where he started at the start of the year, and I know I was one that was on him. I think he's down a couple 100K. So, perfect time to get on. But again, being from South, don't want to overload on those guys. Cleese Haas from the Titans. 55 on the weekend. Pretty sure he was named to start again. I forgot to check him. He's the one I forgot, or one of the ones I forgot. But, if you're on a budget, you need a player. He's the obvious choice, I think. Jacob Preston obviously missed last week with the flu, but he's named back this week. And I guess, a few of the Dogs players are back this week, so it'll be really interesting to see how they go. Taking their home game up to Bundaberg probably isn't the best for a team that's trying to work things out, but maybe the time in camp will bring them together. So yeah, he's a keeper given high ownership. I can't really call him a pod, but yeah, one to sort of have there as a playing player some weeks on the run home. Olaquatu, Bateman, Madison, Martin, we'll throw them all in the same boat. They're all sort of around their break even and average. Um, so, obviously Olaquatu and Bateman are a bit more expensive. I guess Madison probably there represents the most value looking at his average to his price. But I guess, coming off the bench does potentially limit his scoring potential. And Liam Martin, plays on the edge there for um, the Panthers. I know there's been a bit of hype about the right edge players for Penrith this week against the Sharks, given their defensive woes down their left hand side. So could be Martin's week. Jackson Ford, sort of in line with Preston in terms of points and average, although Preston's is slightly higher through more attacking stats. But he's on the bye this week. Sort of like Mitch Barnett. I think if you wanted to cut him, you could trade him to Murray and make money out of it, which I think, that's a really nice trade. You could go to Klonga who's next on the list for not much more money. Yeah, so with Ford, I'm happy if you cut him at this point. Kyle Matangi, 40 on the weekend, so bit of a high break even, but could still be a pod. And then Viliami Kikau finally back for the Dogs, so I've put him as a super pod. In saying that, I would still wait a week. He's got a break even of 89, and I don't think he's necessarily going to explode into action this week. What I'd do is have a look this week. He might, chances are he will drop in price. The Bulldogs have the bye next week. And then if you're looking for a super pod round 24, 5, 6, 7, he has that attacking upside. He has those things we look for with those pointed differences to get us those wins in the head-to-head finals. And Hudson Young, ticking along with the 56. He's on the sort of pod list, but again, well down on the list, particularly given his high break even at the moment. Under the halfbacks and Josh Reynolds with a 92, so backing up his massive 120 last week with another decent score. That will sound the alarm bells for some people where he's 600 grand in good form, negative break even. It's always a trap. He's just, if we were being fair, maybe we'd put the roller coaster symbol on him, but you've got to keep up the tradition of the trap. So yeah, he fits the profile, goal kicking halfback. Probably doesn't take on the line enough though. We want those players that take on the line a bit. They create a bit more doubt in the opposition, and then obviously if they're running the ball, they're a chance of keep running and score a try. DCE obviously fits that mould of running halfback who scored well on the weekend, but doesn't kick goals, so his upside is always limited by that. So for that reason, I'll put him as a bit of a trap as well. SJ 74 on the weekend, which was a bit down on, I guess, the two guns, but has the bye this week, obviously, and then next week on, the draw is pretty nice for the Warriors. So I can understand people wanting to go Hines and Cleary. That was originally my plan for the whole season, was to not even look at someone like SJ. But now that I've got him, and now that I am where I am, I think I'm happy to hang on to him. So Yeah, decision needs to be made there anyway. Phoenix Crossland, 55 on the weekend. So you can see his break even now is pushing up even towards his 3 round average, which is probably more indicative of his where he's currently at, given he's been playing a lot of hooker and big minutes at hooker recently. But he has peaked in price, and with that money, I think you can do a bit in around the halves, whether at halfback or 5/8. So, yeah, if you've got him, I think you can cut him now. Matt Burton, so 50 on the weekend, and that was without Toby Sexton, without Reed Marnie at a dummy half, without there was someone else I was going to say, the likes of Josh Adokar to feed a try assist to. He's back this week, so you can keep the faith with him, I think. In saying that, I am seriously considering trading him out to bring in Latrell because I can't work out which one of my centre wings I want to let go. So he might just be the unlucky one. Mitchell Moses, 72 on the weekend, so obviously a point of difference type option. Um, but given his massive break even, he's not the one I'd bring in this week. You can wait a week or two, and then if you really want a point of difference for the head-to-head finals, it could be him. Nico Hines with the 86, and considering how bad the Sharks were, he just scores points. It doesn't matter who he's against. Um, so you can hold him with confidence. I know a lot of people are trading him to Cleary, and it is something I'm seriously thinking about myself. But I can justify either position. So you never trade a keeper, but maybe you do. And Nathan Cleary, 81 on the weekend. Obviously, didn't need to do too much against the Dogs. Didn't run the ball at the defence like he likes to do, and sort of get himself into the game that way. But it's just warming it back up. I think the next couple of weeks where they play the Sharks and then the Storm will be a bit more indicative of where his form is. So given all the numbers, if you want to sit and wait on the Cleary trading, I think you can. I don't think he's going to outscore Hines by that much this week. Obviously, he will outscore SJ by a lot, but they could come a lot closer in price next week after the 156 break even. And I think also this week will be the last week that really low score sits in his rolling average too. So his break even will improve dramatically next week, which might be the prime time to get him in. So at 5/8, we got Junior Amone or Talatau Amone. I think he goes by both. 66 on the weekend, so with the 120 as well, he's got a nice looking 3 round average, a nice break even. If you're desperate to grab some cash, you could go with that as an option over the next couple of weeks, but then I guess you're still looking to take that money and get yourself a gun for the run home. Cam Munster, so 97 last week. I think this is as low as his price is going to get, hence the bottom symbol there. So I think, if you want to get on Munster, this is a prime week to do so. Kalen Ponga, so another big score on the weekend with a 96. 3 round average of 138 is ridiculous. And, with his average, he is definitely in the gun category in the 5/8 position. Joey Manu, so another solid score from him, 78. His price has probably peaked, and I could have used that symbol, but I guess really his benefit is he does have that nice dual position with the centre wing. So if you're in a situation, a bit like myself, where you want to use, say, Matt Burton's money to upgrade to a fullback, you can slot Manu in the 5/8 position and use him there. Cody Walker, 55 on the weekend. But Latrell's back, which might do great things for him as well. So he's a gun. You know, again, you don't want to load up on all the South players, but if you went Cody and Latrell as your two, and then you had two trades to move them out for your head-to-head grand final, that would be a pretty smart play. Luke Metcalf, so with the 30 on the weekend, he's peaked in price now. So I guess, you could take his money, 100 grand will get you Munster. Um, hopefully it's not a case of you really have to go to a moan and try to keep making money that way. Um, but that could work also. So I guess, you do what you got to do. And Tommy did, 57 on the weekend. So I guess, his 3 round average isn't quite so crazy now, but massive break even. So, here's a pot if you wanted to hold, but also with that sweet lump of cash, you could, get Munster and still have 200 grand to spend elsewhere. So, yeah, it's up to you, but I'd probably lean towards selling myself. Onto the centre wings and the premium options. At the top of the list is Zach Lomax. So one I haven't really featured too much this year. He probably has slipped under my radar a bit. I guess playing for the Dragons doesn't really help, but 3 round average of 98, negative break even at 650k makes for a pretty nice point of difference for the run home. Obviously kicks goals as well, not a fullback, but you know if the Dragons are scoring, then he's getting some bonus points for himself as he converts the tries. Isaac Targo, so pulled out last week with a leg injury, and it hasn't been named in the squad this week for the Penrith Panthers. So just to wait and see. Don't have any more news on how extensive the injury is. But obviously, once he is back, he does become a nice little point of difference. Brian To'o, so I guess last week I did have Targo initially. I just reversed the trade. I was saying to a mate of mine before the game, oh, should I go To'o? And then I thought, oh, hang on, I can just reverse the trade. I don't need to trade. And then To'o scores 2 tries, and I wish I had. 104. So, nice break even at 52. Still relatively cheap at 644. And we all know that he's got the base. He runs the ball all the time, breaks tackles, occasional offload, and then obviously can score tries too. And again, playing on the right edge against Cronulla's left edge could be big points coming. Greg Marzu, so speaking about left edges and big points coming, Newcastle left edge, obviously again fits the mould of ball runner, tackle breaker, try scorer. He's a gun. That's all you can say. CNK and DWZ both on the bye this week. So, I'm a big fan of CNK. I'm holding him. DWZ I could probably take or leave. Your call. if you've got both, I think you have to trade out one, and that one would be Wateni Zalesniak. But yeah, if you've got one or the other, you could probably hold them okay this week. Dan Gagai, Bradman and Best, so a couple of Knights players there. I guess I haven't featured Bradman and Best much either in the stock market this year, but Newcastle left edge, ticking those boxes, 3 round average of 99. So some really nice point of difference options there. And then the last three, all pretty popular picks, all averaging over 70, all guns. Val Holmes, some people might see the big price tag, the big break even, and the upcoming buy and want to trade out, but the Cowboys are going so good. I don't know why you'd want to. just enjoy the ride. Onto the mid-range options, and so a slight variation, 420k and up this week, although I don't think there's anyone under 450 on the list. But Katoni Staggs, we'll give him some credit for his 136 last week. I guess he is one of those players that we talk about that could just go on a run for the next few weeks and win you a head-to-head competition. Right price, right break even, right upside potential. Doesn't have much of a floor, but that's neither here nor there. It could be a nice point of difference. Ravalawa, he had a massive break even last week. I think that was the time to get on if you were going to. Um, Even though he's still a negative break even, there's not that much value there at 560k. Matt Timoko, averaging 53 last week, averaging 60 for the year. He went on a run earlier this year. It's not to say he can't do it again. Lemuelu, so he's back from his bye, playing in the second row in what looks like a pretty full strength sort of Dolphins side. Playing the Bulldogs this week too, so he's every chance for a try. Jay Cavarillo, so 78 last week playing halfback. He's back at fullback this week. So, in terms of these options around the 500k mark, although Lemuelu's there too, so I think either of those are good options at the price. Stags is obviously the riskier one. But I think Averillo provides that right balance of upside along with, some sort of base because of all the times he runs the ball out of the backfield. Jacob Carraz, so I guess another one around that price, and we all know he's essentially Brian Tyre from Wish with his offloads and his love of running the ball and breaking tackles. Uh, Obviously, if the Bulldogs could get on the end of a few more tries, that would help him out a bit. But he's a great point of difference option. I played him this week when Tango pulled out, and it worked out brilliantly for me. So good one to have in the squad. Nick Meaney, sort of similar profile in terms of price, break even. Um, Obviously, the season average is nicer. He kicks goals. He's a fullback. So 53 in what was a beaten Melbourne Storm team. That's not too bad. So real nice point of difference if you want to go that way for the rest of the season. Sammy Valame and Alex Johnston, we'll talk about them together. The roller coasters, they both went all right on the weekend. Valame's average is obviously quite high still, but he's only played about 5 games. Alex Johnston, got a try or whatever on the weekend, so 82. Yeah, I've said enough about Alex Johnston during this year. My thoughts on him. I wouldn't go near him, but I know people who love him because he scores tries. The Hammer, so he's back to fullback this week, which is great news for SuperCoach owners. And there's a lot that have him, so that's why he's got the keeper symbol. It's not really a pot option to hold the Hammer because you're not alone. And a Psycho, so it seems weird having a mid-ranger as a gun, but he averages 74. As we said, the team's sort of back to full strength now, so um, you'd imagine he'd be the beneficiary of that in terms of kicking goals, but also tries and everything else. Onto the cheaper options, so we had to extend this up to 420 just to fit in a few that squeaked over the 400k mark. But Junior Tupou is at the top of this list, matched Katoni Staggs is 136 on the weekend. So averaging 48 for the year, I guess if you're going to go with Staggs with that sort of upside, you could go Tupou. He's already had a sort of big spike run earlier in the year. Wants to say he can't do it again for the next few weeks. Jarrell Skelton, so got his first try on the weekend and scored at 81. So that's fantastic. That's what we want to see. But he has been moved back to the bench. He's the one that's made way for Josh Adokar. So unless they have a change of heart and relieve Blake Wilson of his duties, I think Skelton's one you just have to hang on to because he doesn't offer much value in terms of trading out, and obviously he doesn't have that much cash on him to move him to someone else. Rocco Berry, so 53 on the weekend. Still has a nice negative break even, so if you can hold him this week, you do. There's not really a lot of trade out options unless you're going to nuff him out. But that might be an option too. Billy Smith, if you've got a really tight budget, you could hang on to him. I don't think he's worth a trade in. At the price, I'd rather look at Barry or take the cash from Tupou. They're all sort of similar profile player, I suppose. Another similar one there, Valence Tafare. So coming back from the bye, was playing in the centres this week, which is probably better for him than playing on the wing. But he has peaked in price, so made 200k. You can move him on. You can play him this week. You can just have him as an extra bench cover, centre wing six. Is probably not the worst shout. And Blake Wilson, he's one that has peaked in price. So obviously, if you got on him for the after the big ton up he got a couple of weeks ago against Souths, um, yeah, you probably want to cut him at this point again. It's probably just downgrading to enough. Um, or if you're absolutely desperate, you could play him. But I guess besides that 100, he's probably been more in that 20 sort of category anyway. And then on to the fullbacks. So at the top of the list, Blake Taff, obvious cut. He's not even in the 17 this week with Latrell named to play at fullback. Um, Teddy. So we've got Teddy as a pod purely, and I guess the guns and pods in this fullback category purely just came down to ownership. There's about six guns there if you look at all the pods and guns, but I guess the difference was how or how highly owned they are. Buller, I think we cut him. He's just not quite there. We need two gun fullbacks to finish the season. Dylan Edwards with the 70 on the weekend. Um, with Nathan Cleary back, he is definitely one to keep an eye on and could represent really nice value for the rest of the season. Reece Walsh turned up on the weekend, averaging 77. He's that highly owned that we have to give him the gun category. Same with Gutho. We've had him as a pod all year, but the truth is, I think he's the next most popular owned after Walshy. So he's a gun. Latrell, he's back this week finally. Well, we hope he's back. But at his ownership, that'll be a real pod move to have him. But the ultimate pod move, I forgot to put the super pod next to him again this week. But Scott Drinkwater, another 122. He's averaging 127 over 3 rounds. Looks like his price has peaked given the break even, but the way he's going, you never know. So at $1 million, you're doing well if you can get him in. But when you look at the value, you can get a similar profile player, Reece Walsh, for 400,000 less essentially. Yeah, 400 something like that. Don't know. The quick maths isn't working. Yeah, 400. Don't know what was going on there. So that's for Drinkwater's money, you could get Reece Walsh and then someone like a Ruben Cotter, for example, or you could upgrade someone like a Blake Wilson all the way up to Teddy. You know, so I wouldn't recommend trading Drinkwater in at his price, but congratulations if you've got him. I'm super jealous. All right, so I guess just to quickly summarise the buy, keep, sell, avoid. I probably didn't hype it up too much just then, but I guess Tedesco would be the number one trade in this week, just given his value at the fullback position. Obviously we can't afford Drinkwater. We probably can't afford Gutherson. We probably can't afford Ponga if we haven't already got them. Um, so between Tedesco and Walsh, and for me, Tedesco gets it just because he hasn't got a bye coming up. So, he'll play every game for the rest of the season. Roosters are desperate to make the finals. I think Tedesco will be a big part of them trying to get there. So, I don't know if they will. I'm just saying that if they get close or if they do, Tedesco will be a big part of that. And also, I think it's time to bring in Cam Murray. So, I kept saying don't bring in the South too many South players. But when you look at it, the value option is Cam Murray. We know he's been keeper levels in the past. Had a bit of a rough start to the year. I think he was carrying some injuries, but looks like he's free of all those now. He's free of Origin, so one that you can bring in confidently. On the keep list, I've sort of cheated here and put three names in, but I think you keep the Warriors players that you think will be useful for the rest of the season. So Tohu, SJ are probably the two I would pick. Fanua Blake as well would probably fit in that category if we're being honest. Um, Also keep Jacob Preston. I guess um, people might have panicked last week with him being out injured or whatever, or sick. He wasn't injured. But he'll be back. And like I said, the Bulldogs look like they're back at full strength. So, he could be a very valuable piece for the run home. I think maybe if you're doing Preston to Murray, I could come along for that. But other than that, I think there's other options you can trade out. On the sell list, Jeremiah Nanai is the obvious sell. But then also, I guess those more fringe type warrior assets, so your Jackson Fords, your Mitch Barnett's, DWZ. I think, now's the time to get rid of them. You can obviously pick up players that will play every game for the rest of the year, so you're not missing out in future weeks as well. And on the avoids, so the usual suspects: Adam Reynolds, Trap, Alex Johnson, roller coaster. Don't want to be on it. Um, but yeah, they're probably the picks that I would suggest. And so that is it for the stock market video for round 22. As always, if you've got any thoughts or questions, feel free to comment down below this video. If you enjoy this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of good stuff. And other than that, I'll catch you in the next one.